Before we start, make sure to like and subscribe to the channel and leave a comment with where you're from and what time you're watching. That way, YouTube will keep showing you stories just like this one. Now let's begin. I was 23 at the time, a journalism student at DePaul University in Chicago. Thanksgiving break had just started, and I had a flight booked home to Denver. But that evening, a heavy snowstorm rolled in, grounding most outgoing flights. By midnight, mine was officially canceled. No hotel vouchers, no alternate options. I decided to tough it out overnight in the terminal rather than waste money on a hotel. The area near Gate K9 was quiet, lit by flickering fluorescents and backed by tall glass windows. Only a handful of passengers remained, a few curled up under jackets, others staring at dimly lit phones. It felt strangely disconnected, like time moved differently there. I found an empty seat near a dusty vending machine and a squeaky outlet that barely charged my phone. The floor was cold, the chairs were stiff, and the ambient hum of the building somehow felt louder in the emptiness. I tried watching an old video I'd downloaded, but the audio kept glitching. That's when I first heard it. Faint, high-pitched crying somewhere behind me. I paused the video and looked around, expecting to see a kid with their parent. But the terminal was still. No movement, no strollers, no families. The crying continued, soft, distant, yet somehow close. I stood up and peered toward the gate area, but it looked completely deserted. Thinking maybe a child was near the bathrooms behind the wall, I slowly walked that way. Each footstep echoed awkwardly, bouncing off tile and metal with an unnatural ring. As I turned the corner past a closed newsstand, the sound stopped abruptly. I waited, listening for it again. Nothing. Just silence, and that ever-present electrical hum. I went back to my seat, chalking it up to stress, or maybe someone passing earlier. Still, something in my body felt wrong. A quiet, instinctive unease I couldn't shake. I pulled up my hood, turned it into a makeshift pillow, and leaned against the cold glass. I was just starting to drift off when the crying started again, only this time it was closer. My eyes snapped open. The older couple near the wall were still asleep. The businessman who'd been typing earlier was gone. The sound came again, the same soft crying, clearer now, almost rhythmic. It was coming from behind the vending machine. No one could be back there. I stood slowly, half creeped out, half annoyed, thinking maybe someone was messing with me. "Hello?" I called softly, in case someone was hurt. The crying stopped instantly, not fading, not slowing, just gone, like someone hit a mute switch. That silence was worse than the sound. Heart thudding, I walked toward the vending machine. The crying hadn't just stopped. It had vanished mid-sound, like something unnatural had cut it off. Behind the machine was a narrow gap and a gray wall, too small for anyone to hide in. I peeked around anyway, expecting maybe an abandoned toy. Nothing. No kid, no parent, no movement. Just buzzing lights and the faint rattle of a heater nearby. A cold shiver ran down my spine, not from the temperature but instinct. Something about the sound had been wrong. Too even, too repetitive, almost like a recording. But who would play something like that in the middle of the night? Trying to shake it off, I went back to my seat and checked my phone. 2:41 a.m., battery at 7%. The charger had stopped working. I thought about moving closer to another outlet across the terminal, but most of the lights over there were off. The idea of walking through that shadowed space didn't sit right with me. As I sat debating, movement caught my eye near gate K11, just beyond the far row of seats. I looked up. A child. A little girl. Maybe 5 or 6 years old. Standing alone in the middle of the walkway. She wasn't crying now, just staring straight ahead. Her face was pale. Her clothes looked outdated, like a Sunday dress from decades ago. She wasn't holding anything. No bag, no toy. "Hey," I called softly. "Are you okay?" She didn't react, not even a flinch. I took a step toward her, and she turned, walking calmly down the corridor toward the closed security checkpoint. Something about her movement was off, too smooth, too steady. I hurried after her, glancing around for any adult, but the terminal was empty. When I turned the corner where she'd gone, the hallway was empty too. Just the faint green glow of the exit sign above the checkpoint. "Hello?" I whispered, quieter this time, unsure if I even wanted her to answer. My voice bounced softly off the walls like I was in a vacuum. I started walking backward, keeping my eyes on the darkness ahead. My shoes squeaked and the silence behind me felt thick. Then I heard it again. The crying. This time it was right behind me. I froze. For a second I couldn't move. The sound wasn't natural anymore. It was layered like multiple children crying together, echoing at different speeds. I spun around. Nothing. No girl. No movement. Just rows of chairs and flickering lights. But I could feel it. Someone had just been inches from my neck. I walked briskly back toward the open terminal, heart racing, instincts screaming to get out. I passed the older couple again, still asleep. But something was wrong. The coats covering them had shifted, but their bodies hadn't. They looked unnaturally still, like mannequins. I tried not to look again. But then a voice broke the silence. "She's not supposed to be here." It came from the gate agent's desk. I turned, but there was no one, just an old radio playing faint static. For some reason, that sentence chilled me more than anything else. I didn't sit again. I started pacing, pretending to check the flight screens just to stay awake. Every time I passed a window, I glanced out, hoping to see the first light of morning. But the runways were still pitch black. It felt like time wasn't moving at all. Then I saw her reflection, not in the window, in the glossy airport floor beneath me. Her reflection stood there, but mine didn't. She was behind me again, head tilted slightly like she was trying to understand me. I spun around fast. Nothing. "I don't know who you are," I said out loud, voice shaking. "I'm just trying to get home." Silence, heavy and suffocating, like the whole airport was holding its breath. Then, every flight monitor shut off. The buzzing lights overhead flickered once, then dimmed halfway. My ears popped, like the pressure had changed. The air turned cold, basement cold, with no wind or draft. Then came the crying again, closer this time, younger, like a baby struggling to breathe. It rose and fell in pitch, never forming words, just painful rhythmic sobs. That was it. I couldn't take it anymore. I ran toward the main escalator. It wasn't running, but I climbed fast, desperate to reach the upper level. Halfway up, the noise stopped. Silence again. At the top, I turned back and saw her, standing at the bottom of the escalator, completely still. Her eyes were black, not demonic, just empty, like painted glass. I didn't wait. I ran toward the front of the terminal, straight to the glass doors. They didn't move, locked tight. I slammed my fists against them, panic setting in. Then, movement, a security guard coming from a side hallway. Relief flooded me. I waved frantically. "Hey, over here!" He looked confused but walked over. "You all right?" he asked. The first real human voice I'd heard in hours. I told him about the little girl. He frowned. "You sure you're not dreaming, kid?" But then he added something that made my stomach twist. "You're not the first one to say that. Every few years, someone reports a crying child near K1. He hesitated. "That gate's been closed since '98. I didn't ask why. I didn't want to know. I sat near the front until dawn, waiting for flights to resume. When mine finally boarded, I didn't look back. I've been to that airport twice since, but I never go near that concourse. Something was wrong that night, and I think it knew I saw it. So if you ever get stuck alone at O'Hare overnight, don't follow the crying. Don't look at your reflection. And if you see a little girl near gate K11, walk the other way. Don't speak. Don't blink. And for the love of God, don't listen to her cry." If you enjoyed this story, be sure to like, share, and subscribe. I work as a veterinary technician in Boise, Idaho. My job usually keeps me close to animals, but last December, I had to fly to San Diego for a training conference. It was my first solo trip in years, and I was already nervous. The airport was nearly empty when I arrived around 5:00 a.m. The ticketing area felt cold and sterile, lit by that harsh fluorescent light I've always hated. I got through security faster than expected, and with 2 hours left before boarding, I wandered the quiet terminal. Most shops were closed, and only a few people sat scattered across rows of metal chairs. Near Gate 14, I noticed a small boy crouched behind a row of seats. He had a little green coat and messy blonde hair, probably no older than 6. He peeked out, smiled at me, then ducked back behind the seats like he was playing hide and seek. I looked around for his parents, but there was no one nearby. Just a couple of older men on their phones, and a janitor mopping a few gates down. When I looked back, the boy was gone. I hadn't heard footsteps or laughter. He had just vanished. I walked over and checked behind the seats, but there was nothing. No bags, no toys, no sign a kid had been there at all. Trying not to overthink it, I assumed he'd run off to his parents. I sat down with my coffee, scrolling my phone, but after a few minutes, I saw him again. This time across the terminal, peeking out from behind a vending machine. Slowly, I stood up and walked toward him. "Hey, are you okay?" I asked gently, not wanting to scare him. He didn't respond, just stared at me, wide-eyed, then darted out of sight again. This time I followed. When I rounded the vending machine, he was gone. The hallway was empty. I checked every corner, every possible hiding spot, but there was no sign of him. Finally, I gave up and headed back to Gate 14. As I passed the window, something made my stomach drop. In the glass reflection, I saw the boy standing directly behind me, silent, unmoving. But when I spun around, no one was there. The seats were empty. My heart pounded. I told myself it was nerves or lack of sleep, but I couldn't shake how real it felt. I went to the information desk and asked the attendant if anyone had reported a missing child. She looked confused, searched through her screen, then shook her head. No reports. I told her about the boy, how he vanished and appeared in reflections. She gave me that polite, skeptical look, the one that says you're probably just tired. She suggested I ask TSA to check the footage, so I did. A security agent escorted me to a small windowless office and pulled up the cameras. I described everything: Gate 14, the vending machines, the boy's green jacket. He scrolled through the footage until he found the right timestamp. "Here," he said. On screen, I watched myself walk toward the vending machine, pause, and appear to talk to someone, but there was no one there. No child. Just me, talking to empty air. He rewound it twice. Nothing. I could feel my chest tighten. "I saw him," I whispered. "He was right there." The agent said quietly, "You looked like you were following something, but there's nothing on our end." I left the office in a daze. Everything looked the same, sterile, quiet, lifeless, but it all felt different now. The air seemed heavier, like the building itself was watching me. I sat near a window, trying not to cry. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw him again, standing outside the gate door that led to the tarmac. No one should have been out there. Not staff, not passengers, and definitely not a barefoot child in freezing air. He just stood there staring at me. When I blinked, he was gone. My phone buzzed in my hand, but the screen had frozen on the last photo I'd taken during the trip. In the corner of the image was something new. A blurry, pale shape I didn't remember capturing. My throat went dry. I told myself it was a trick of light, that I was exhausted, but deep down I knew it wasn't that simple. It was past 3:00 a.m. when I went back to security, hoping for some logical update. The same agent looked up, concern written all over his face. "There's no record of any child entering the terminal for hours," he said gently. "Are you sure you're feeling okay?" "I saw him," I said firmly. "He was real." My voice trembled. The agent's expression shifted, sympathy mixed with unease. Then over the intercom came the call for my flight to board, the last flight of the night. I grabbed my bag and walked toward the gate, desperate to leave this nightmare behind. The lights above flickered as I walked, shadows stretching strangely along the walls. A cold shiver ran down my spine. As I reached the jetway door, it swung open on its own, and there he was, the boy, barefoot, standing in the doorway, staring straight at me with hollow eyes. "Why are you following me?" I whispered. He didn't answer. He didn't move. Then, without warning, his body flickered, like static on a broken TV, and he was gone. Just gone. I stumbled onto the plane, my hands shaking. The flight attendant smiled, but I couldn't even return it. I sat down, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it. As the plane lifted off, I tried to convince myself it was over, that maybe I'd imagined it all. But deep down, I knew what I saw was real. A few minutes after takeoff, the cabin lights flickered once more. Then, faintly, like a whisper buried in static, I heard a voice in the back of my mind. It wasn't the boy's voice, it was deeper, distant. "He's not real," it said. A pause. "But I am." I never saw the boy again. I'm a 33-year-old single dad from Aurora, Colorado. My son Mason is 8, a quiet kid who's always by my side, especially in unfamiliar places. We were flying to San Diego for spring break, just the two of us, something we'd planned for months. The delay at Denver International hit just after we cleared security and found our gate. They announced a 3-hour wait, so we took seats near gate C-48, surrounded by tired families and scattered travelers. Mason curled up with his Switch and headphones while I scrolled through my phone. After a while, I told him I'd go grab us some snacks and coffee. He nodded without looking up. I walked toward the nearest vendor, still within sight of our gate. I was gone maybe 10 minutes. When I came back, his seat was empty. No Mason, no backpack, no Switch. I checked the bathrooms first, then the Starbucks line, calling his name as I moved. No one had seen him. Not the baristas, not the people nearby. Panic didn't hit me all at once. It crept in as I realized no one had noticed a thing. A woman and her teen daughter said they never saw a kid sitting there, which made no sense. He'd been right next to them for half an hour. I flagged down TSA and told them my son was missing, that he'd just been at gate C-48 minutes ago. They treated me like I was confused, even asked if I was sure we'd come through security together. That question rattled me. Of course we had. I held his hand through the line. They asked for proof, so I showed them our boarding passes, 2 tickets, 1 adult, 1 child, and a photo of Mason from that morning. The officer's expression told me something wasn't adding up. They brought me to a back room to check the footage. My heart pounded so hard I could barely see. The screen showed me walking through security, jacket off, laptop out, but there was no Mason behind me. I begged them to rewind, check another angle, but every camera showed the same thing. I was alone. I tried explaining, my voice cracking. I remembered holding his hand, his red hoodie, his small voice asking for pretzels instead of chips. None of it showed up. They asked if I was on medication, if I had custody, if I was under stress. I demanded to speak to airport police. They put me in a separate room, no windows, just a metal table and a humming vent. I texted Mason again, even though I knew he wouldn't reply. When that blue bubble turned green, I felt something inside me break. An hour later, an officer came back with a printout from the gate cameras. "We went back to when you were seated," he said. "The seat was always empty." My hands shook as I showed him a photo I'd taken at 3:37 p.m. Mason sitting cross-legged, eating trail mix. He flipped the footage timestamp. The seat beside me was empty the entire time. I zoomed into the photo. Mason was there, clear as day, the gate sign behind him. A woman in a pink hoodie 2 seats down. "She's in the video," the officer said. "But there's no kid next to you. You were alone." My mind couldn't keep up. They checked Mason's phone GPS. It had never pinged inside the terminal. Its last location was the parking garage. That made no sense. I remembered him taking a photo of the plane, laughing at a dog wearing shoes. But according to the footage, Mason never even entered the terminal. They asked me to stay overnight while they continued the investigation. I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw him sitting in that plastic chair, swinging his legs, wearing that red hoodie. But no one else saw him. I didn't leave Denver the next day. I sat in the airport lobby, watching families pass by. Kids tugging on their parents' sleeves, little backpacks bouncing, none of them looking twice at me. The police questioned me again, gentler this time. They searched the parking garage, reviewed the footage again, even asked if Mason had ever talked about running away. He hadn't. He was 8. He still held my hand crossing the street. Then a detective showed me something that froze my blood. A still frame from the footage taken when I'd left for snacks. The seat beside me was empty, but in the reflection on the window, Mason was sitting there clear as day, looking straight ahead. When they played the full video, his reflection turned toward the camera, even though I wasn't there, and then it faded like fog lifting. No one could explain it. They gave me back my phone and told me they'd stay in touch. That was 6 months ago. The case is still open, but the updates have slowed to a trickle. They still have my luggage. I can't bring myself to fly anymore. Every time I hear an airport announcement, flight delayed, gate change, boarding group C, I feel sick. Sometimes at night, I hear Mason's voice and wake up expecting to see that empty chair beside me. If you ever find yourself stuck in an airport overnight, keep an eye on the reflections. Sometimes they show you things you're not supposed to see. And if you hear your child's voice but don't see them, don't look away.